There are many social issues facing our urban school settings today. Choosing one to focus our research assignment on was a challenging task. We didn't quite know what to expect and saw this as a hurdle on our educational path. We began our mission centering our research on white privilege in the urban setting. However, as we continued through our learning process, we became more aware of ourselves and the roles which we play in our society. Upon conducting some research, we realized that our whole inquiry was based upon a misconception. After hitting this wall, we realized that we needed to redirect our focus, broadening our scope to the classroom dynamics in order to understand the true attitudes of the teachers and students.
We didn't know how to direct our research question. After hitting our roadblock, we were left with an open slate to observe our classroom with a more neutral approach, letting the research lead the researcher. By not having a direct focus on something specific, we were then able to see more clearly the emotions, attitudes, and effects of the student-teacher relationships, or the lack thereof. Each week, we went to the classroom where we were paired up to help certain students with current assignments. There always seemed to be a group of students who would not involve themselves with the rest of the class. If the students were all up front on the carpet, the other students would be sitting at desks in the back of the room, not necessarily being disruptive, but certainly not involved in what the class was doing. When it was time for the students to work by themselves on the assignment, the teacher told us to choose a student to help. Our first instinct was to help those who had been distracted in the back of the room, who seemed in obvious need of extra help and attention. But we were quickly told to pick a student who had been sitting up front and paying attention.
Okay, we understood. Reward those with good behavior, but what about the students in the back who had not been paying attention? Are we now punishing them for being distracted? They were clearly already behind in the lesson since they were never encouraged to participate with the rest of the class on the carpet. Instead, they appeared to be bored and disinterested. We had an opportunity to help get them involved, but we were stopped and told not to because they had not been paying attention. Why were these students not encouraged to participate in the lesson? Why was it okay for these students to fall further and further behind just because they were distracted during class? Is it because they are already expected to fail, as Duncan and Morrell suggest? Only those paying attention were being rewarded, and those not engaged showed much frustration for the assignment. This frustration became a hindrance in their learning and was never acknowledged. Frustration turned into anger with some of the students, who may have felt as if they were being punished, when in reality, they just didn't feel included in the lesson.
Anger. After my partner and I sat back and talked about it, we realized anger seemed to be a reoccurring theme, which presented itself without really looking for it. After reviewing our field notes, we came to a story about a boy who was having difficulty in staying on task. He was working one-on-one with an aide who seemed equally frustrated. The aide and the student were having difficulties communicating and were becoming more and more agitated. Everyone was mad, nobody was learning, and that's a problem. One angry and disruptive situation brought the whole class to a halt. Nothing constructive was being accomplished. As the lesson continued, a variety of interactions occurred which were not relevant to the lesson. One child called another student's grandmother a name, resulting in an argument which remained unaddressed. In another situation, a student who became incidentally involved with an argument between two other students was treated as the perpetrator. In yet another situation, a student was trying to sit at her assigned seat, while the others at that table told her to go elsewhere. This classroom did not appear to act as a community, and the amount of anger and frustration seemed to work as a hindrance to their learning.
Why were these angry situations allowed to perpetuate? As educators, is it not our responsibility to encourage and enhance learning while building constructive relationships with our students? In order for us to be effective teachers, it is crucial that we know each student as an individual and know how each student's learning needs differ from others. Knowing this will help us to differentiate our teaching techniques in order to accommodate everyone, therefore creating a more inclusive community environment, as described by Angela Valenzuela. Another thing we noticed was that among all of this chaos and separation, nobody was acknowledging the anger. These students were not being taught coping skills or how to deal with their emotions. We need to give all of our students the techniques and skills necessary to handle real-life situations, both inside and outside the classroom. Emotions need to be examined and addressed. This is our opportunity to be a positive adult role model for our students. This goes beyond the lesson plan.
Through our readings and observations, our next step would be to find out what research has already been done in the areas of anger, anger management, anger resolution, and precipitating events which may contribute to the display of anger. Is it possible that any of these might be a direction for additional research? It may also be worth our while to further research the negative effects of non-engagement in classroom activities. We owe it to our students to encourage their involvement in their learning, since we know it will lead to success.